Budget 2018-19 will be interesting from various perspectives. It is the last, perhaps the last budget before the government goes into the general elections in 2019. It's a very state poll heavy year. 2018 has 8 states going into state elections. So this is sort of the political backdrop always makes sense to sort of take into account in order to gauge budgetary imperatives. But I think this budget will be relatively free of politics and populism and focus on some of the key issues that need to be addressed. And one of the things that it will discipline the government to not to sort of give in to populist pressures and political imperatives is the fact that I think, unlike what a lot of people think, the fiscal deficit, which is the government's net deficit at the end of the year, when it subtracts revenues from expenditures, that will pretty much stay on the track that it had committed to earlier, which means that if the fiscal deficit is 3.2% this year, it will be 3% next year. So if you have that kind of discipline, that kind of rein on your spending abilities, you are less likely to give in to all kinds of political pulls and pressures. That said, clearly there are issues which are vital to address, and the efforts to address these can often be misinterpreted or interpreted as being populist. I think the rural sector is going through a very major problem, and there will be a number of moves to address this. So the rural common man, I think, will be a beneficiary of a number of schemes. The other thing is, the other big thrust I think the government has is on urbanization and urban development. So again, on things like affordable housing, urban infrastructure, etc., there will be emphasis, and this again will seep through to the real Aam Aadmi, the middle class or the lower middle class, and of course the people who are closer to the poverty line. So that's something that one can look forward to. Some of the usual tax incentives will possibly be there. There could be an increase in standard deductions for income tax pays, and that is very much par for the course. We've seen it in the past budgets, and so that in a nutshell sort of gives you what the budget is likely to focus on. The interesting bit about this budget, and this is particularly important, is the fact that a large chunk of what previous budgets dealt with, which was with indirect taxes, things like excise and other things, that will all be outside now that we have the GST. So the focus will really be on direct taxes, where I talked about standard deductions, perhaps a reduction in the corporate tax rate, and on expenditures. And I think although the government will spend on a number of schemes, it will not overspend to the extent that it breaches its fiscal target. I think for the common man, a couple of issues which are sort of somewhat related to the budget are important. Interest rates, inflation is up. Interest rates are unlikely to go down. Perhaps they'll sort of go up a little. So don't be terribly surprised if you see your EMIs remaining flat or moving up on the loans that you have taken. And despite the fact that the government will maintain its borrowing discipline, there are a lot of other pulls and pressures outside of the ambit of government revenues and spending that will drive this. So that in a nutshell is the budget. A budget that perhaps going by received wisdom and political punditry warrants some kind of populist measure, but I think one in which the government will be very restrained and perhaps disappoint those who expect great largesse from the government. But I think prudent spending and greater targeting of funds to the needs of the real Aam Aadmi is what this budget is going to be all about.